Today is May 30th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It is a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps and 12 traditions. Today out of the Big Book, we are going to continue our journey through Chapter 7, Working with Others, pages 93 and 94. And out of the personal stories, we're going to be reading They Lost Nearly All, the Safe Haven story in that, which is pages 455 through 457. And finally, we're going to continue our journey through tradition number 6 in the 12 and 12 by reading page 157. So with that, my friends, I hope you're all doing well this morning. We've been given a brand new set of 24 hours, and it's up to us today who we decide to be. You know, we've always got a choice, and it's just nice to be alive, and it's nice to, take it one day at a time once again. So let's press on and let's get to the good stuff. So my friends, for the last 2 days in the chapter Working with Others, we've received some pretty practical advice of, how to work with others, very, very pragmatic ideas here. And we left off on a pretty interesting note on page 93 yesterday. Remember those italics. Usually, especially in the first printing of this book, I've always heard it was more expensive to print those words. So, you better believe that they must have been important when they did them. So here's what I see in italics from yesterday. So tell him exactly what happened to you. So 1, share our story. And then 2 lines later, he does not have to agree with your conception of God. That seems to be important too. And then the last line in italics from yesterday, the main thing is that he is willing to believe in a power greater than himself, and that he live by spiritual principles. It's not necessarily the same thing as religious principles, as this book does a really good job of explaining the difference. But this is a spiritual program. And we're going to continue to learn a little bit more about how we can help others, which is a big part of Step 12. Remember, this whole chapter is dedicated to just Step 12. So some great practical stuff here. Let's get to it. Page 93. When dealing with such a person, you would better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. There is no use arousing any prejudice that he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions about which he may already be confused. Don't raise such issues, no matter what your own convictions are. Your prospect may belong to a religious denomination. His religious education and training may be far superior to yours. In that case, he is going to wonder how you can add anything to what he already knows. But he will be curious to learn why his own convictions have not worked and why yours seem to work so well. He may be an example of truth, that faith alone is insufficient. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish, constructive action. Let him see that you are not there to instruct him in religion. Admit that he probably knows more about it than you do. But call to his attention the fact that, however deep his faith and knowledge, he could not have applied it, or he would not drink. Perhaps your story will help him see where he has failed to practice the very precepts that he knows so well. We represent no particular faith or denomination. We are dealing only with general principles common to most denominations. Outline the program of action, explaining how you made a self-appraisal, how you straightened out your past, and why you are endeavoring to be helpful to him. It is important for him to realize that your attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital part in your own recovery. Actually, he may be helping you more than you are helping him. Make it plain that he is under no obligation to you, that you hope only that he will try to help other alcoholics when he escapes his own difficulties. Suggest how important it is that he place the welfare of other people ahead of his own. Make it clear that he is not under pressure, that he needn't see you again if he doesn't want to. You should not be offended if he wants to call it off, for he has helped you more than you have helped him. If your talk has been sane, quiet, and full of human understanding, you perhaps made a friend. Maybe you've disturbed him about the question of alcoholism. This is all to the good. The more hopeless he feels, the better. He will be more likely to follow your suggestions. Your candidate may give reasons why he need not follow all the program. He may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning which requires a discussion with other people. Do not contradict such views. Tell him you once felt as he does, but you doubt whether you would have made much progress had you not taken action. On your first visit, tell him about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. If he shows interest, lend him your copy of this book. All right, some great stuff here on page 94. Can't wait to come back to this in just a minute. All right, my friends. So if you remember from yesterday's reading, our friend here, well, we've seen pretty much from the get-go, at the very beginning of the story, he's in jail, but we get the flashback of his life and how he got there. And we're at a point where he has lost job after job after job. He ends up being a disc jockey, gets fired because of his drinking. Then he is a weather reporter for a broadcasting station. And we can see here that, as a matter of fact, one story, he gets this award for being a great storm chaser in this very dramatic broadcast. And we find out that he's been doing it all from the comforts of his own home as he's calling in and everything. So we can see here that, he is very good at, well, at least he thinks he's very good at deception here. And we know that alcohol and deception often come hand in hand. So we're on page 455. We're going to continue this story by reading 455 through 457. I went home and called a friend that I had seen at the local mall a week earlier. I hadn't talked to her for a couple of years, but I had noticed how different she looked and behaved. As we spoke, she said she hadn't had a drink for over a year. She told me about a group of friends who were helping her stay sober. I lied to her and claimed that I hadn't had a drink myself for quite some time. I don't think she believed me, but she gave me her phone number and encouraged me to call if I'd like to meet her friends. Later, I worked up the nerve to call her. I admitted that I had a drinking problem and wanted to stop. She picked me up and took me to my first AA meeting. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I knew that I had found a protective haven. But during the ensuing 4.5 years, I fell into the category known in AA parlance as a chronic slipper. I might get a good 6 months of sobriety under my belt, but then I'd get a bottle to celebrate. I did all the things that were suggested for me not to do. Within my first year around AA, I made some major decisions like getting married, renting the most expensive apartment that I could find, not using my sponsor, avoiding the steps, hanging around old haunts with my old drinking pals, and talking more than listening during meetings. In short, I was not responding to the miracle of AA. My disease progressed, and I became a regular patient in detox hospitals, intensive care units, and treatment centers. Permanent insanity was drawing near, and the gates of death were in view. There's a saying that alcoholics either get sobered up, locked up, or covered up. Since I was not genuinely willing to do what it took to get sobered up, I had the other options to face. I never dreamed that it would happen so quickly. It was a beautiful September weekend just before Labor Day. I made the decision to buy a case of beer and a bottle of wine. Later in the evening, I drank whiskey on top of the beer and the wine, blacked out, committed a drunken crime, was arrested, and within 10 days was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. I guess an alcoholic death can come in much the same way. I drink, I black out, I die. At least with prison, I would have another chance at life somewhere down the line. I can't start to describe the forced humility that is placed upon the alcoholic who comes to prison. Although I deserved to be in prison, the trauma was horrible. The only encouragement and hope that I was able to find was from reading the personal stories in the back of the tattered big book that I found in my cell. Then one day, I heard something that was music to my ears. A correctional officer announced that an AA meeting was to be held in the chapel. When I walked into the meeting, I took a seat in the circle of chairs where I once again found a protective haven. As I penned this story, 3.5 years have passed since that meeting in the chapel. I moved to a larger prison unit and have remained very active in the awesome program of Alcoholics Anonymous. AA has accomplished so many things in my life today. It has given me my sanity and an all-around sense of balance. Now willing to listen and take suggestions, I have found that the process of discovering who I am really begins with knowing who I really do not want to be. And although the disease of alcoholism inside of me is like gravity, just waiting to pull me down, AA and the 12 steps are like the power that causes an airplane to become airborne. It only works when the pilot is doing the right things to make it work. So, as I've worked the program, I have grown emotionally and intellectually. I not only have peace with God, I have the peace of God through an active God consciousness. I have not only recovered from alcoholism, I have become whole in person, body, spirit, soul. I've had one God thing after another happen to me since submitting myself to the principles of AA. The trial officials who convicted me and the victims of my crime have all decided to support my early release from prison. Coincidence? I think not. I've received letters from former employers who've heard of my sobriety and offered me employment again in the radio industry. These are just samples of God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. One of the things that I have committed to do in return for God's grace is to immediately become active in a correctional committee upon my release. Bringing the AA message back into the jails and prisons is extremely important to me and my own sobriety today. From experience, I've realized that I cannot go back and make a brand new start. But through AA, I can start from now and make a brand new end. Wow. All right. These last 3 pages, pure gold here. Cannot wait to come back to this in just a minute too. And finally, we are in tradition number 6 of the 12 and 12. An AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. So in the last couple of days, we've been talking about hospitals, that the ideas of hospitals for AA, maybe AA should get involved in politics and all these other things. And we talked about how, this is just like the tradition says, diverting us from our primary purpose. We're making this way more convoluted than it needs to be. So, again, we're going to build on that idea by reading page 157. These adventures implanted a deep-rooted conviction that in no circumstances could we endorse any related enterprise, no matter how good. We of Alcoholics Anonymous cannot be all things to all men, nor should we try. Years ago, this principle of no endorsement was put to a vital test. Some of the great distilling companies proposed to go into the field of alcohol education. It'd be a good thing, they believed, for the liquor trade to show a sense of public responsibility. They wanted to say that liquor should be enjoyed, not misused. Hard drinkers ought to slow down, and problem drinkers, alcoholics, should not drink at all. In one of their trade associations, the question arose of just how this campaign should be handled. Of course, they would use the resources of radio, press, and films to make their point. But what kind of person should head the job? They immediately thought of Alcoholics Anonymous. If they could find a good public relations man in our ranks, why wouldn't he be ideal? He'd certainly know the problem. His connection with AA would be valuable because the fellowship stood high in public favor and hadn't an enemy in the world. Soon they spotted their man, an AA, with the necessary experience. Straightway he appeared at New York's AA headquarters asking, "Is there anything in our tradition that suggests that I shouldn't take the job like this one? The kind of education seems good to me, and it's not too controversial. Do you headquarters folks see any bugs in it?" So we will find out. All right, so I wonder who this particular person might have been to represent AA for an alcoholic endorsement company. This is interesting. But I'm sure that things don't exactly work out right because this tradition eventually was written. So then I'm grateful that it has been written. But going back to the big book real fast, the core text, I really like on page 94, just outline the program of action. Just explaining how you made a self-appraisal, how you straightened out your past. And it's important for him to realize that your attempt to pass this on to him is a vital part of your own recovery. My sponsor used to say that to me all the time, and I didn't believe him. I was like, what? Because I'd always thank him for taking the time to help me. And he would always say, you're helping me more than I'm helping you. And it wasn't until I began to work with others that I realized that he was right. I thought he was just being like nice or like a false humility, but he's exactly right. And a lot of times when we're helping others, if that other person, I've worked with a lot of others that actually went back out and it was very defeating at the time. But my wife, who's very much pro AA, because she's seen the way it's benefited my life and in turn has benefited our family. She always grins at me and she says, yeah, but you're sober. Just like Bill's wife said to him one time. It's amazing how true these steps are when you actually do these things, and how true the promises are when you actually do these things. And if our person goes back out, they talk about this. Hey, for he has helped you more than you've helped him. Talk about changing your perspective of things. It's great stuff. And then going to the personal story real fast. Once again, I see this person's God story in Safe Haven. And it's amazing, So talking about deception earlier, this guy's a chronic liar. I mean, he's lying all the time and getting by just so that he can have more alcohol. And pretty much ever since his teenage years. Well, he sees an old friend of his at a mall, and she talks about how she's been sober, and she knows this group of people that have really helped her to stay sober. And he goes, I haven't had a drink in a while too. But here's the God story, right? Or at least in my view. Something deep inside of him says, you know what, I need to call her. So a little while later, after that meeting, he calls her. He says, I think I got a problem. I think that's the beginning of him having a completely different life. But don't get me wrong, it gets worse before it gets better. He goes to AA, which is amazing. The seeds are getting planted here. But he's a chronic slipper, according to his self-proclaiming here. For 4.5 years, I fell into the category known in AA parlance as a chronic slipper. I might get a good 6 months of sobriety under my belt, but then I'd go to get a bottle to celebrate. So, in his alcoholism, even during the times he's trying to go to AA, he had self-admits, he's like, I didn't listen. I talked a lot more, made major decisions during this early sobriety, didn't listen to a sponsor, avoided the steps, hanging around old haunts and old drinking pals, and talking more than listening during the meetings. So he admits all these things. And sure enough, he gets drunk. And he commits a crime that must have been very, very serious for him to get 20-year sentence. And then, sure enough, in prison, he picks up an old big book again and finds out that there's some AA meetings going on in the chapel of the prison. He attends those, and that's when his life begins to change. But the bottom line is, he does change. He finally admits maybe that he's powerless, and now he is 3.5 years sober. It says, I've moved to a larger prison and remained very active in the awesome program of Alcoholics Anonymous. But now he's active. Now he's willing to listen and take suggestions. It says that at the bottom of 456. I have found the process of discovering who I really am begins with knowing who I really don't want to be. That's a great line right there. We could just pause and chew on that for a little while, right? If you don't know who you are, well, start with who do you not want to be. That's good stuff right there. And although the disease of alcoholism inside of me is like gravity, just waiting to pull me down, AA and the 12 steps are like the power that causes an airplane to become airborne. It only works when the pilot is doing the right things to make it work. What I gather from that is I got to do my part. So as I've worked the program, I've grown emotionally and intellectually. I not only have peace with God, I have the peace of God through an active God consciousness. I have not only recovered from alcoholism, I have become whole in person, body, mind, and spirit. So he finds out that he might be able to get out of prison early, but that doesn't mean he's going, okay, I'm done with AA. No, he's going to bring AA back into the prisons. For those others out there that are in prison that might feel hopeless. And then I love this last paragraph. From experience, I have realized that I cannot go back and make a brand new start. We can't. I wish I could go back and tell my younger self, hey man, don't pick up that beer. Hey man, don't lie to your family. Don't do it. It's just going to cause everyone pain. I can't go back. But the next line and the final line. But through AA, I can start from now and make a brand new end. So today, my friends, we can start right here, right now. And the decisions we make today can impact our ending. Starts right here and right now, one day at a time, right? So if that's the case, my friends, and you're sober today, you are a miracle. And those who love you are very proud of you. I just urge you on to just keep going. Let's apply the steps to our lives today for those around us. And I promise you, if we do these things, which I truly believe are godly, good principles, we're going to have a feeling of wholeness. And these promises will come true. So with all that, I don't speak on behalf of AA, NA, Al-Anon, or any other sect denomination. I'm just a guy, just a grateful friend in recovery, and I'm grateful that you're here today. And if we are given another set of 24 hours, I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.